Hello, Night Owls. We're so glad to have you here tonight. We're so excited that Ashlee Cowles is here. She is so brilliant and talented, and she is the author of The Poppy and the Rose, which came out this week. I'm holding up a picture of the cover because shipping is terrible right now and I don't have my books yet. But so this is the beautiful cover. You've probably seen it around, and she is the author behind it. So we're super excited to have you here tonight, Ashlee. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me on. It's fun to talk about this book, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to start with author Danielle Stinson, author of Before I Disappear, called The Poppy and the Rose, Spellbinding and Ambitious, a book for the forever shelf. I thought that was the best recommendation you can get, a book for your forever shelf. And I've seen people on reviews saying they'll buy it just for the cover and just keep it on their shelf. So we sent Ashlee actually several versions that we liked from different artists, and this is the one that she chose. So I was just complimenting her on her gut instinct for that, and we're really happy with how beautiful the book is. Okay, so Ashlee, also stick around. We're going to do a giveaway for a paperback copy of The Poppy and the Rose at the end, so stick around. But Ashlee, would like to start with you just telling us a little bit about yourself, where you are, how you're surviving 2020, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, well, I live in Traverse City, Michigan, and so we have been surviving 2020 with lots of trips to the beach. We live right on Lake Michigan. It's really beautiful area, and now that it's fall, we're doing a lot of apple orchards and hikes and a lot of outdoor things, but winter is coming and it is very long here. So I'm not quite sure how we're going to survive 2020 after spending November through April indoors, but the summer's been great.
Awesome. Are you from Michigan?
My whole extended family is from Michigan, but I'm a military kid, so this is actually the first time I've ever lived here beyond just summer visits.
Oh,
So we moved back here recently after my first daughter was born. So we've been here about 2 years.
okay. Very interesting. We're going to talk a little bit more about your military travel background in a little bit, but kind of building on learning about you as a person, can you tell us about your journey as a writer? You've written a lot of different things. You're blogging about things. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got there and what interests you?
Sure. Well, I think like a lot of writers, I was definitely a voracious reader first, and that was kind of a constant through my very mobile childhood, always having books as friends. And when we would pack up to move to a new location, having lots of books to pack. And I never really thought, I don't know, I just never thought about the people who wrote the books. I just was so in love with the books. So it felt like one of those things that you just were a writer. I didn't realize you became a writer, tried writing. And so it was much later in life that I actually tried to start writing fiction. Not too much later, but a lot of people talk about, writing their little stories when they were kids. And I wasn't really like that. I sat down and started writing fiction after college, and the first year after I got married, my husband and we ended up working at a ski resort in the German Alps. And he was working in housekeeping at the hotel, and I was working I was a waitress. And so we both had evening shifts, and we would have our mornings free. And so I was like, well, I could get into this routine of trying to start writing in the mornings and then going in for my shift in the afternoons. And it just worked out great. And I fell in love with writing. And so now I have this Poppy and the Rose is my third published novel, and kind of during that entire time, I've had a lot of other jobs, other day jobs. I was a high school teacher. I taught philosophy at the college level. Now I do copywriting and nonprofit fundraising. So writing has always been kind of in my professional background, but yeah, fiction is definitely where my heart's at for sure.
Awesome. Wow. You have a huge diversity of writing and communication, which seems really impressive. I forgot to mention Carrie's in the comments. So Carrie will be taking questions. So if you have questions as we're talking, if you think of something, just shoot them in the comments and we'll get to as many as we can. And we would love to hear what you have to ask Ashlee. So going back kind of, so you've talked about living in different places as a military kid, and even beyond that, you've traveled a lot. You've written other books about pilgrimages and a lot of other places you've traveled. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how it impacted you as a writer?
Yeah, well, I mean, a love of travel definitely kind of feeds my stories, and a love for kind of vivid descriptions and those little details that you only really know if you've been to a place, like just little things that you can't quite pick up on watching a YouTube video about a location. I love including things like that in my stories, or secondary characters that are based off of some kind of really quirky person that I met traveling, loosely based off of them. I love those, being able to incorporate those kinds of details. I also think there's something about, I'm a very future oriented person who lives in my head and always kind of looking straight ahead to the future and planning. I'm a big planner. And whenever I travel, I find that I really get into the present and like everything slows down. Time almost seems to change. It's like a different kind of time when you're traveling. And so I find that really just kind of is a great space to get a lot of creative ideas. And it just really kind of, I guess, has fed my writing life up to this point. And like you said, growing up in the military, we moved about, I think at least 8 times by the time I was 18. Wow. And I spent my high school years on a US military base in Germany. And, we had our prom in a castle that was, located in the city near the installation. And so history was just a very present force in those very formative years. Like it isn't quite when you live in the US, it's not living and breathing all around you in most locations. So I think that really shaped my imagination as well. And I ended up being a history major in college. And when I set out to write fiction, I thought it would definitely be historical fiction. So I'm kind of as surprised as anyone that I have, my three YA novels are contemporary, though The Poppy and the Rose has a historical thread, and they are all, you could say about modern people, contemporary people kind of engaging with the past in some way. So yeah, that's definitely a theme.
I love that. That's a beautiful explanation. So going along with that, how did The Poppy and the Rose, where did that idea come from, and how did that kind of you got a lot of different elements that you bring together really well in that, like you said, the past, the present, and then you got some other cool elements. So can you talk about where that idea came from and how it came together?
Yeah, so a lot of things influenced The Poppy and the Rose. It was my second try at a complete novel, and the first YA manuscript that I ever wrote. So it was actually a work in progress for a very, very long time. And working with you all was like what I really needed to really bring the story to life and kind of pare it down to what it needed to be. Because I brought in so many things that I love into the story, and so it is kind of a mashup of a lot of different things, a little hard to categorize, a little out of the box. And originally, I wanted it to be my military brat novel. Like that's why I chose to write YA, is because I felt like the story that I had to tell from the perspective of a teen was, what it was like growing up in a military family and moving all the time and living abroad in kind of this weird, you're living overseas, but you're still like in a very American culture, kind of like an American bubble, but you can go out of it to experience another culture. That was just such a unique upbringing that I felt like that was the young adult story I had to tell. So that was originally a bigger part of The Poppy and the Rose than it ended up being. So that Taylor, the contemporary character, her father is in the military, but I ended up pulling a lot of that out because there was just so much going on, and I wanted the historical element to be a bigger part of the story. So a lot of the military brat stuff got saved for Beneath Wandering Stars, which was my debut novel. And I kind of went more with the historical with The Poppy and the Rose. And honestly, I think what inspired, writing a novel that involved the Titanic was I lived in Colorado before we moved to Michigan. And we visited the Molly Brown Museum house in Denver. So the unsinkable Molly Brown's house. And it just, I picked up this amazing biography about her and just learned so much about who she was and how much bigger her personality and life and story was than just the Titanic. Like, all of that is amazing too, but she was just this incredible woman outside, beyond that, and lived such a fascinating life. So I thought, like, I want to write a novel with her as a character. And then, of course, the Titanic, James Cameron's Titanic came out when I was in 8th grade, and I was one of those girls who sobbed herself to sleep listening to the soundtrack and saw the movie, I don't know how many times in the theater. So I'm sure, deep down there was my tween self always wanted to write a novel about the Titanic.
I love that. Yeah. We all had that teen crush.
Yes.
Pretty funny. Awesome. There's a couple of questions. Sorry, I was looking down because there's questions coming in. Danielle asks, did you listen to any specific artists or songs when writing this book?
Yes. Let's see. I'm trying to think back because I have kind of a writing playlist and it doesn't change very much. So I'm probably still listening to the same people. I think at this time I was listening to a lot of a British band called Fink, and a Colorado kind of folk singer-songwriter named Gregory Alan Isakov. And probably a lot of instrumental kind of soundtrack. I'm sure I was listening to the Titanic soundtrack, of course. But yeah, I think those were some of the artists I was listening to at that time, and probably am still listening to.
If it's not broke, why fix it, right?
Yes.
Candace asks, who is your favorite character to write?
Let's see. I did really enjoy writing Margaret Brown, or Maggie Brown. I will call her by her correct name because she never went by Molly. That was Hollywood. Her nickname was Maggie. I really enjoyed writing her character and incorporating some of the other kind of fun details about her life into the story. And I think I really, I loved Taylor as a character and kind of the journey that she goes on, learning about her father and this mystery she has to solve to kind of, figure out if the memory she has of him, who she thinks he is, can be redeemed. But I just writing Ava was so fun. I just love how she kind of starts out as a little bit of a snob and but goes through this, pretty powerful transformation. And she was a really fun voice to capture.
Yeah, reviewers seem to be resonating with Ava really a lot, and so you just really nailed her character. And Hannah had read early copies of the book, and I asked her about that, and she said, yes, Ava is a really strong, fun character, but Taylor's the vehicle for the whole story. And so she said together they are a really cool balance of great voices. And that was one of my questions for you, is how did you create distinct voices, and what maybe tactics did you use to keep them from sounding the same as you were writing?
Yeah, I mean, just the time difference definitely helped with that. It makes it a lot easier when you have a contemporary voice and a historical voice. And I think one of the challenges was that because I was trying to give Ava more of kind of an old-fashioned, aristocratic, kind of more sophisticated manner of speaking, it felt like it could make Taylor feel a bit younger, like because of the different, just the way probably Ava would have spoken would have not. I didn't want her to sound like a contemporary teenager. I wanted her to sound like how I imagined a 17-year-old at that time would sound. So I think it helped them feel very distinct. But that was, something I wanted to kind of make sure they both had a similar growth, experience of growth, and both, still felt like they were going through that coming of age experience that you kind of expect from a YA novel. I think it also helped. I love thinking about how characters interact with setting when it comes to voice. And so one thing, because I love descriptions, and I love the atmosphere of a novel, and I think that's why I love historical fiction so much, and just world building in general. But it's fun to ask, how would this character see the ship? Not any character or how I would see it, but what would she notice? What specific details would she pick up on? And a lot of times that's based on their kind of motivating force, their desires, their wants, and that kind of guides you to what they would notice when it comes to setting. So I love kind of that interplay between character, voice, and setting.
I love that. That's an excellent answer. There's a couple of questions. Shannon asks, she said, what was the hardest scene for you to write? This can be skipped if it spoils the book.
Okay, well, this could be a spoiler, but the ship sinks. And but it actually was a very emotional, even though, like I said, I was a big Titanic fangirl as a teenager, and we all know the story. I think it was still to kind of be living it through the eyes of a couple different characters was pretty emotional and powerful. But I think that's a good thing, because that if I'm feeling it, hopefully the readers are feeling it too. And I'll just say there was a kind of a secondary character that I added much later in probably the very last revision that I did of this manuscript, which was revised many, many times. And I won't give too much away, but there's a pretty, it's kind of a father-daughter moment, and it's a pretty heartbreaking scene. And so it was hard to write, but powerful too.
Awesome. This perfect segue for talking about this question, but Shannon asked, how much research did you put into your book?
A lot. I mean, I read a lot about World War I and the Titanic, and kind of some of the other themes in the story, the spiritualism movement. There's, I did quite a bit of research. I think it's interesting because since the novel was written over so many years, it's hard for me to identify, like, there was a period where I was just doing research. It wasn't like I went to a library or anything and sat there for 6 months and then started writing. It was kind of just an organic part of the process that was, there from day one, but something I did throughout the writing process. But that's my favorite part. So I love research, and so I think it never feels like work. It's a really fun part of the process for me.
Yeah, and going along with that, how did that differ from your other novels, or was it fairly similar processes for all of them?
I think the novels, my first two, Beneath Wandering Stars and its spin-off Below Northern Lights, since those were contemporary, I definitely wrote them a lot faster. Like, the first draft was written very, very quickly, whereas this book, because there's so many layers and there's a lot going on, and because of the historical thread and how that connects with what's going on in the present, it took a lot longer to get right. So I think when I don't have to do as much research, it definitely, the first draft comes a lot faster. But again, those first two books were based on a lot of traveling experiences. So I think having kind of those vivid memories, or even just, going into my Facebook account and looking at pictures of when I walked the Camino de Santiago, and that sparked a lot of ideas, and helped me write the story pretty quickly.
Awesome. Well, Candace had a couple of things. She said, I liked Taylor from the beginning. She's resourceful and resilient. And she said, I was so impressed how you captured their incredulity. It made it resonate to now for me. So I think that you really humanized the experience in really interesting ways with the characters. So good job with that.
Oh, thanks.
Haley asked, what was the most surprising thing you learned while researching for this book?
Let's see. It was more that there were just so many fascinating people on the Titanic. So I already mentioned I loved writing Margaret Brown, but there were some other just really interesting characters. There was a man called William Stead. He was one of my favorite secondary characters, and he was a journalist from London, a journalist and an activist, and he considered himself an early feminist, and he was actually traveling to an international peace conference that was going to be held in Carnegie Hall in New York, and President Taft had invited him personally to speak because there was kind of murmurs of a war that was going to happen in Europe, and so people were kind of trying to prepare for that and prevent that. And so he was going to speak, and he had many years earlier had a premonition that he would die over open water, that he had a dream that he would die in a shipwreck, and that is what ended up happening. But he just had this really fascinating story. There was another character, Joseph Laroche, who was a engineer born in Haiti and then educated in Paris. And he was traveling back. He was traveling to back to the U.S. from Paris with his wife and 2 daughters. And he was one of the only people of color on Titanic. So just learning about his story was really interesting. There were just so many fascinating characters, and we kind of hear about, a couple different people, the Astors and Margaret Brown, but it was interesting to learn about maybe some people whose stories weren't quite as well known, and to include them in the book.
Yeah, I remember reading about William Stead. That's really cool. So one of the things we've kind of touched on is you have all these different elements that come together. So with this book and in general as a writer, do you feel like you try to find what the readers will enjoy, or do you write what you enjoy and what you believe brings it to life?
It's definitely a bit of both. I can say that with this book, because I think it was an earlier book and I didn't really have readers in mind yet, because I hadn't published anything before, so I didn't have any kind of reader feedback or audience. That I think it's kind of a love letter to all the things that I love, and hopefully that there's others like me who appreciate those elements. But I think it's a bit of both, and now I'm starting to have a sense of who kind of my readership is, what they like. I can kind of, based on feedback I've gotten, I can kind of imagine these people more. It helps to have kind of, Stephen King called it an ideal reader, kind of one person that you're writing for, or a specific kind of community of readers, like your beta readers or friends who are going to always read your books. It's helpful to, it becomes a lot easier to get outside of your own head and start to think more about what readers are going to connect with, kind of once you start building that readership. So I think I'm definitely thinking about it a lot more now than I used to.
Awesome. Do you think you'll stick with YA, or do you have any desire to try other genres?
I think if another YA story grabs me, I'll definitely go with it. But I do think I'd like to write a little bit other genres. Definitely historical fiction. Like I said, that's that was my first love, and that's something I'm working on right now. So I think I probably will start moving in that direction.
Okay, like adult historical fiction?
Adult historical fiction, I think, yeah. And some maybe historical fantasy as well.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Any, you don't have to tell us, but like, are you thinking like period dramas with Jane Austen flavor, or Merlin-y medieval? What kind of history are you thinking?
Well, I have a degree in medieval history, so that it would be nice to use that. So that may, I'm sure I'll write some novels set in that period at some point, and that could be where some fun historical fantasies could come out of as well. But I also love the ancient world, so ancient Greece, ancient Rome, kind of mythology retellings are really fun right now. So kind of thinking of something along those lines.
Very cool. I am excited to see what it is. Candace says the mysterious funds. I thought it would be Ava's photography, but she says the gift passed to May. Did I miss the clue for the mysterious funds, or is this a spoiler?
The mysterious funds. I'm trying. Is that in reference to the money that Ava receives?
I'm guessing.
Okay. So yes, Ava receives, I don't think this is a big spoiler, but she receives, yeah, she does receive some money, and she uses that to care for orphans and kind of children who are displaced during World War I and World War II.
Okay.
Not sure if I answered that, but.
Well, I know where to find both you and Candace, so we can connect.
Okay.
That didn't answer the question. Okay, we have a couple of questions about your writing process. So I would love to know if you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but can you tell us a little bit about your writing process day to day?
Sure. Well, day to day right now, it's a little all over the place because I have two young children, including a newborn. Well, I guess he's over 3 months now, so not quite a newborn, but so it's definitely kind of writing in the cracks whenever I can. I love writing first thing in the morning, but that hasn't happened in years. So I've had to kind of shift and be flexible there and try to write whenever I have a free moment, or stay up late, which is really hard for me to do, but I becoming more of a night owl in order to get some writing done. And I'm always doing a lot of research and reading. Again, I just love to learn. So that's one of my favorite parts, and definitely feeds a lot of my writing ideas. I do a lot of kind of early on writing in notebooks and brainstorming, and I mean, people would probably not know what to make of the dozen or so journals I have lying around that just have random things scribbled in them, that, there'll be a grocery list on one page and then like a chapter outline on the next page. So it's my own chaotic system. And as far as like the whole, like, do I plot, do I discovery write, or am I a pantser? I definitely plot a lot more now than I used to. I used to just kind of see where the story took me, but I definitely have found that it helps to really at least map out my characters and kind of their main arcs, and kind of what's motivating them, what they want, and how that will drive the plot. So I have used tools like the hero's journey, or I love the kind of the story grid approach, and that definitely helps with some kind of basic plotting. And I have found that I tend to write a pretty sparse first draft, and then I go back and layer things in. So my first drafts are usually a lot shorter than they will end up being. I know some people dump it all on the page and then have to cut a lot out. I find that I layer things in over and over as I go. So I really enjoy the editing process for that reason, because that's where I feel like I'm really kind of refining the story, and I just have to get that first draft out, and that's the hardest part. And then I know that I'm gonna, work out a lot of the plot stuff as I go.
Good answer. Tanya asks, what advice would you give a new writer, someone who's just starting out?
Yeah, I mean, there's a quote that has been coming to mind over the past couple of days that I wrote a little bit about on an Instagram post yesterday, I think. It's the quote by Henry David Thoreau. He says, "How vain is it to sit down and write when you have not stood up to live?" And I have always loved that quote. And yeah, that's definitely something. I think if you want to start writing, one of the first things to do is just try to live an interesting, meaningful life where you're kind of pushing yourself to get out of your comfort zones, trying to put yourself in situations where you meet different types of people, where you can notice things that maybe you're not going to notice in your everyday life. And I know that's really hard right now, given our current situation where we're kind of experiencing the world through screens a lot of the time. And I'm definitely feeling that myself. Like, okay, after this is over, I'm going on like a backpacking trip somewhere because I need to like be recharged and refreshed and like in the tangible physical world. But I think, that's just a great place to start, writing what you know. There's kind of that cliche advice, write what you know. That doesn't just mean what you personally have experienced, but like what you know about what it means to be a person, what you know about what it means to be human. And I think that the more we can kind of ask big questions and wrestle with what human nature is, and just try to live in an interesting way, that is going to eventually, like, I think we're all living in a story. So I think, it's natural to tell stories. And so the two are very, very connected for me.
I love that. That's a great answer. I want to talk a little bit about, if any of you go Google Ashlee Cowles, you'll see her all over the place. She's on podcasts, she's on, she blogs a lot, and she's really interesting to me specifically because she talks a lot about, she posted today on Instagram a picture of her cute little baby and her new book. And it was cute, but then you flip it and it's a picture of her last book and another new baby. So she talks about that. So go find her on Instagram. She talks about how she didn't plan it and it wasn't, a marketing tool, but I thought it was really cool because I feel like a lot of us don't talk about our kids and our personal life, or our personal life and our kids and our professional life together. And Ashlee talks a lot about motherhood and religion and travel and how these all work together to be creative. And so, Ashlee, how does that, one, why is that kind of your mission, or what are you hoping to do with that conversation? And why is that meaningful, and how does that help you, I guess?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I was for a very long time, very afraid of motherhood because I thought it meant the end of writing. And I think that sometimes the either the message is like, you'll have to set it aside for a very long time and you may come back to it. Or it's kind of, you're going to have to really focus on the writing path and to the detriment of your kids. And I even, I tried to find novels about this theme. And I won't name them, but that was kind of the message, even in the novels, was like, it's impossible to be a great writer if you are a mother. And it's definitely hard, but I find that I almost have, I think stories are powerful and meaningful, and I know they shaped who I am. And so I don't think it's just entertainment. I think we all could use escapes, and we definitely need some right now. But I think that, stories are one of the most powerful, ways of communicating that there is. And I know how profoundly they shaped me growing up. So I think having my own kids has made me care about that even more. And, it's not, I don't want to paint a picture that like it's super easy and I'm just churning out books, because that's not the case. It's a lot harder to find the time, and I have a part-time day job, and so it's tough. I have a lot of family support, which really helps, and I definitely couldn't do it without that, I don't think. But I the more I started kind of writing about that, blogging about that, and talking to other people online, the more I discovered that there are a lot of other women who feel the same way, and who are writing in the cracks, as we say, and during nap times, and it's a challenging way to live, but it's really rewarding too.
I love that. And I love that you make it so your kids are a part of your wins, your creative wins. They're part of that, instead of just, I did this despite you. You kind of marry those two together, and I love how you do that. Okay, I'm going to ask Ashlee a couple of, I call this our shotgun round, just kind of get to know her a little bit better with what she's interested in. So if you have any final questions, put those in the comments, and we'll start to wrap up after this. But okay, Ashlee, for the shotgun round, just tell us your current favorite. I know none of us have it's like asking to name a favorite child. I get that, but your current favorite author.
Okay, so this, I think I'm going to give you the answer, a current potential favorite author, because I just started reading her, but I have a feeling I'm going to be like, I think she's only written 2 books, but I think, and they're big books, but I think I'm going to be, consuming them very, very quickly. Susanna Clarke. So she wrote Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which, came out a while ago, and I've always kind of heard about it, but I just started reading it, and I'm really, really enjoying it. And I think she has a new novel out, so that's why her name started popping up everywhere. And I was like, I'm going to finally check her out. And I really love her writing style, and just what she's doing is really interesting. So I think she could potentially be a new favorite. For sure.
Good answer. So maybe that is your also current favorite book, or do you have another recent one that you really love?
Well, so to go back to your last question about creativity and motherhood, with my first daughter, my first child, who was a daughter, when she was nursing, I read, late into the night, the historical novel Kristen, Lovren's Daughter, it won the Nobel Prize in 1920. And it's this huge historical epic set in medieval Norway. And it's beautiful, and it's covers everything. But there's a lot about motherhood, and that's kind of one of the few stories, novels where I've seen that theme kind of front and center. So I read that, during my, midnight rocking chair sessions with the first baby. And it's one of those books that you have to revisit to get everything. And so I'm rereading it right now with the second baby. So yeah, that's definitely my current favorite, and will probably be one of my all-time favorites forever.
I love that. That was a great answer. Candace said, motherhood helped me be the writer I wanted to be. So I feel you on this. So I think it really resonates with a lot of people, what you're doing. So that's amazing. Okay, your current favorite music.
This is tough, because I gave, like I said, I gave the 2 artists that I was listening to when I wrote The Poppy and the Rose, I still really love. Actually, I listen to podcasts a lot more than music right now. And so when I'm listening to, I often listen to music when I'm writing, but that tends to be more instrumental. And so I'm going to completely butcher his name, but there's a pianist named, I think it's Ludovico Einaudi. But look him up on YouTube. His piano pieces are really beautiful, and it's great writing music.
Okay, ooh, that's good to know. There's a good tip for you writers. Okay, your current favorite television show.
I actually really need a good show, so if anyone else has recommendations, yeah, my nights have been saved for writing. So I'm not watching a whole lot of TV right now, but when I was still pregnant, I was binge watching a lot of BBC Masterpiece shows. So the Durrells in Corfu, there's a great kind of World War II show called Home Fires, and then kind of something a little darker and but very interesting. I really like the Black Mirror dystopian series on Netflix.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, that's a good range you've got there.
Yeah.
Your current favorite movie?
I really loved the new Little Women movie. The recent Little Women was really great. And I'm really looking forward to the new Rebecca. I don't know if anyone has seen the trailers on Netflix, but that I loved that book in high school. That was definitely an inspiration for the Poppy and the Rose, you know, kind of the Gothic setting. So I'm really excited about that, the movie that's coming out, I think, next week.
Oh, I didn't know it was that soon.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And Ashlee wrote a great article on Little Women. So look that up. It's about mothers. So there's a theme here tonight.
Yeah, there is a theme.
Okay. And your favorite snack? Do you snack while you're writing and in general?
Yes, unfortunately. And that favorite snack is chocolate. And probably, right now, since I live in Northern Michigan, pumpkin donuts are everywhere. So that's a current fall favorite.
Sounds amazing. I need to find that. Okay, Tanya, or Tanya, I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. She says, what would you say is your most interesting writing quirk?
Interesting writing quirk. You know, I can write on airplanes, like on a laptop. Let's see, I don't know. Yeah, I always have to have coffee or some kind of hot beverage. I don't know if that's, you know, tea. I think that's almost every writer though. You have to have your favorite mug with some kind of movie or literary reference, and have that by your side when you sit down to write.
I feel like you should show people that mug. Did you guys all get a look at it? Because
it's from The Princess Bride, but it's really cool because when it's hot, it's white and then it gets darker but it says, "I'm not a witch, I'm your wife." So if you're a Princess Bride fan, that's where that's from.
It just brings it down to our level because you're talking about all these books I've never read and music, pianists I don't know.
Well, if you all-time favorite movie, that's probably it. Okay. So
it's a good choice. Yes. Hey, I think that was the last of the questions. I want to ask you guys now. Carrie's going to keep track. So I have 4 questions, and whoever gets the most right, the most quickly, gets a paperback copy of The Poppy and the Rose. Or if you've already bought that one, we'll send you a different one. But I'm excited to share that one with somebody. So here's the first one. Oh, I guess I should have sent Carrie hopefully Carrie was listening. We'll see. Where did Ashlee start writing at a ski resort? And there's a tiny bit of a lag, so Ashlee and I will stare awkwardly at each other while you guys answer. Oh, Darby says, World on Fire is a really great World War II series. And Candace says, yes, Little Women, watching Enola Holmes next. And Candace says, I literally write to earn coffee. It's fun that Enola Holmes was one of the recommended books with Ashlee's. That they're both in the top. They've both been in the top 3 all week. So if you like Enola Holmes and vice versa. Okay, did anyone get that one, Carrie? Where did Ashlee start writing at a ski resort? No. This is where the lag that I was telling you about Ashlee gets annoying. Okay, we'll go to number 2, and then Carrie can tell me who got that one. Number 2 is, where was Ashlee's high school prom located? Okay, I'm gonna see if I can. Okay, Haley got that one, or the first one. I don't know. Haley, good job. Okay. And then the third one is, whose house inspired the Titanic pieces of The Poppy and the Rose? Okay, there's one more question. Okay, so Candace got that one. Okay, last question is, what is Ashlee's favorite time of day to write? Okay, so Ashlee, where did you start writing at a ski resort?
It was in the German Alps.
Good job. Yes. Good job. You got it right, Ashlee. Okay, where was your high school prom located?
It was in a castle.
That's amazing. She said Haley got that one. Is Haley your sister, Ashlee?
She is. So she said she's cheating. Disqualify her.
Haley.
He does know.
Whose house inspired the Titanic pieces of The Poppy and the Rose?
It was the Molly Brown House Museum.
In Colorado, right?
Yes.
So that's close to some of you, like Darby. Okay. And then what's your favorite time of day to write?
First thing in the morning.
Yay. Okay, waiting to see the final. I think it's between Haley and Candace. And then Darby had one last question, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
She asked, what do you do really well as a writer? Big question.
Yeah, that is a big question. I hope I incorporate, like, I guess what I would see as like timeless themes. I hope I incorporate them into the story in a natural way. Like that's something I love about storytelling is I was a philosophy teacher, so I love like all the big questions, and I love that like a story is a way to explore those through people instead of through kind of like abstract discussions. And so I hope I incorporate, those kind of big questions we all ask as people, in a way that's natural and compelling and doesn't feel like it's something extra added to the story, but that it's like deeply part of the characters and the plot.
I love that. That's a great talent. Can you humor me for 2 seconds? So you have a medieval history degree, you taught philosophy, you've got like writing and communication in there somewhere. Can you give us a little picture of how that all comes together?
Yeah, it comes together, and the only thing I could do with all that is become a writer. So, which is what I always wanted to do from the beginning.
So it's your degree in philosophy?
Or it's actually in theology.
Okay.
But I taught at Pikes Peak Community College in Colorado Springs for a number of years, and then I taught at a high school in Fort Collins, Colorado, and then for an online high school in Utah.
Okay, very cool. Yeah. And that's Darby's neck of the woods.
Yes.
Colorado, and then Carrie's in Utah. So that's awesome. Okay, Carrie. Oh, Tanya asks, was Edelweiss in the German Alps?
Yes.
Yes. Did you dance to the sound of music and spin around?
That's pretty much where we were living. It looked just like that. Yeah, it was rough.
Okay, well, I'm going to have Carrie tell us who the winner is, but do you have any final words? Anything you're excited about readers to discover when they read Poppy and the Rose?
Like I said, some of those untold stories of the Titanic, or maybe some new characters you never knew about. I hope you'll enjoy learning more about them. And I hope it's just a fun, kind of fast-paced read as well. I've writing a mystery was not something I ever thought I would set out to do, and it's tough, man. I admire mystery writers because there's a lot of thinking and plotting involved, and so I hope readers kind of enjoy the twists and the turns, and that it's a fun escape.
Awesome, that's amazing. And also, where do you want people to find you beyond the book? Where should they look for you?
Yeah, you can find everything at my website, which is ashleecowles.com.
Okay. Oh, Cowles, I should have asked you. I've been saying wrong.
No, it's okay. You said it how it sounds. So
I'm so sorry. Well, now
no problem.
Okay, check her out online. Follow her on Instagram. She always has great inspirational quotes. And she said there was a tie, so she drew a name, and Haley is the winner. So Haley, if you have the book, Carrie will be in touch with you, and we can figure out a different one, because if you're her sister and don't have the book, that's a problem. But
anyway, you'd be in big trouble if that's the case.
Maybe you can have an autographed copy and sell it in 10 years when Ashlee is huge. And yes, so thank you so much. Sorry, I have these dings going on trying to manage Facebook and the Zoom call, but thank you so much, Ashlee. I think I always probably embarrass her, but I think Ashlee is so smart and brilliant, and she's so well-rounded in a lot of different things, and I think that comes together really well in The Poppy and the Rose. It's just a beautiful book with such a cool plot and so many cool elements. So thank you so much for being here tonight, Ashlee. I really appreciate it, and I hope that the viewers learned something new too.
Thanks so much, Emma. This was a lot of fun. And thank you all for being here.
Yes, thank you. All right, have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Subscribe to our channel so you'll never miss an upload, or join us live every Thursday for author interviews, book clubs, writing advice, and more on Facebook at Owl Hollow Press, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. See you Thursday.